everyone, it's Carolyn here to share another channeled message. This time it's Celeste and me again. We haven't done a video for a while, and when we sat down to actually just kind of talk, we knew we had wanted to talk about the divine feminine for quite some time, but we were actually on some other topics, and then this just kind of showed up. And you'll see that we hit on kind of the surface of all of this, that we could go so much deeper. So what you're going to get is little bits and pieces of some things that came into our awareness, as well as obviously channeled information. So we're talking about divine feminine today, what that actually means, and in addition to that, we're touching on sexuality, sacred sexuality. And what does that even mean? And how does that connect with the divine feminine? And we're touching on alchemy. So all three work together. And as you'll see, we're going to have some connecting threads to this that came through for us during this channel that we did. So there's a lot more we could talk about with respect to these pieces, but as you see, we're going to touch on a lot of different things. This is a deep topic, and it's one that we have never learned about in humankind. We have never understood to its fullest. And obviously, as you watch the video, you're going to understand that Celeste and I still don't, even though we channeled some information. There's so much more that we can learn. So I hope this helps you touch on these topics a bit and take what it's worth for you. And again, like I always say, these are puzzle pieces for your own journey. You take what works for you, for your own puzzle of your life journey. If it all works, great. If some of it does, great. If none of it does, great. That's what's meant for you. So I hope you enjoy today's message, and then I'll touch base with you at the end.
It's not about sexuality.
No. Oh, I just heard the words mistaken notion. Oh, in modern society. Mistaken notion in modern society.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now they're talking. Okay, because they're saying, because sexuality has become a tool.
Yep.
Oh, I see. Now they're showing me media, like they're showing me pictures of like advertisement media, the whole female thing, okay, now they're saying the word, sorry, I'm going to keep going on this, and then they're saying grabbing onto that, like humans grab onto that thinking, and then they said, and then there's ship sales, which means what they're trying to say is they think that's the expression of the sexual expression. We then tend to think that that is the expression of the divinity. You know what I'm saying? Of the, they're saying that's not it at all. It's been, they just said it's been hijacked.
Okay. So the divine feminine has been hijacked by societal expectations around sexuality.
Yeah.
However, the divine feminine, like the sexual part, is only a very small part of the divine feminine. The divine feminine is accessing who we really are. And let me just back up a little bit. The divine feminine applies to both men and women.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
So it's just this overarching, what's the word, like theme or the divine feminine is more about the creativity of what we want in the world, the creativity of our personal lives and personal journey. It involves, because the divine feminine is all about the creative aspects of us. Women are able to create life in their body.
Yes. And okay, they just said the expression of that creativity. So they're talking about that in both men and women, and not the creating of life, but the creating of that expression of, okay, they're saying how to be the creator in your fullness, meaning in full love, if that makes sense. But they're saying humankind has gotten mixed up with the sexuality part. They just said they equate that with love. The divine love, like if you're having sex and you're thinking it's divine or whatever, or you're expressing your sexuality, but it's all about the sexuality first and foremost, Well, they just said you're mistaken. Does that
Yes.
make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's the information that I've gotten as well, is that we have been sold a bag of tarnished goods, so to speak, in our society, that sexuality is like at the forefront of importance. And that's not true. The media has really pushed this agenda of sexuality. However, the divine feminine is about the energetic, creative expression of our soul self, our true self in this physical form.
Yes, and you know what I'm hearing? That is not what is being sold to humankind. What's being sold is the sexual part, because what happens is the sexualization, they're saying, of the divine feminine. Then what that does, it takes you fully down another path that was never intended, and you miss everything else. Okay, does that make sense?
Absolutely.
You have, yeah, and so they're also saying to me, and I want to try to express this properly. Okay, the beauty of the human body is divine. However, the beauty of the human body is not first and foremost with respect to the divinity of the feminine. So what we see a lot of is pictures and people doing all kinds of, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, you have to be beautiful to be divine feminine. I think that you're not a beauty queen, but you have divine feminine in you. We all do. It doesn't matter what you look like, is my point. That doesn't exclude anyone, but we've made it so that it excludes certain people, because we then tend to think, oh, look at her, she's absolutely gorgeous. Look at her body. Look at her, how she moves. Look at her hair.
Look at what she's wearing.
Yes, and then we say, I can't be that.
Yes, and that's it. That's the hijacking part that I see all the time, like on Instagram and on Facebook. It's this,
yes.
Almost everyone who talks about the divine feminine, and I'm not trying to badmouth these young women who are out there who are talking about the divine feminine. However, it takes away, it presents this idea that only if you are young and beautiful and have a certain body shape and are dressed a certain way are you able to access the divine feminine.
Yeah, and what they're showing me as you're talking, they're showing the shell of you. That all that matters is the shell of you. Now, I believe a lot of people understand that's not really true, but that's what they show, and that's what they, I don't want to say sell, but you know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to add to this is it's not just younger women. It's older women doing the same thing too, right? Like, think about our society trying to look younger all the time, right? When in the days of old, okay, they just said the word crone. The crones were, you know, that sounds like a really horrible word. You think of crone, it's like, ew, you know, all gnarly but they were the ones that were so revered, the older women, with the long histories of, you know, struggle and work and magic, and they're showing me, they're saying they were not of the youthful beauty that you would expect, but they were the most revered, is what I'm hearing.
Because they had the power
and the wisdom,
yeah, and the experience.
Mm-hmm.
So they knew themselves. So that was the other piece about the crone, is that an elder woman had the experience and the wisdom to know who they really are.
Mm-hmm.
So they were not overcome with self-doubt, with being easily manipulated by others. Like, they had this really strong sense of self, and that's where their power was.
You know what they're also saying is, okay, they're saying society was flipped on its head. Basically, you didn't get the respect and the being revered until you were older. Do you know what I mean? Until you'd gone through the life journey and experienced, you know, growing of wisdom. And yes, there may have been beauty, but it was not, okay, they keep saying the divinity was not seen in its fullness. Okay, they're showing a blooming flower, a lotus flower they're actually showing, blooming. That, oh gosh, I have chills. The fullness of that came in the later years.
Yes.
And that's when the divine feminine, because you grow into your divine feminine is what they're showing me. That's when then people were revered for that at that point in time. Whereas now we flipped it around. They just said, I think you said this earlier, sold a bill of goods. And then it just, they say it claims you. It claims you, and then all you're thinking is the physicality, and then it takes the older generation, it brings them back into the youthfulness of thinking you have to look like that to claim your femininity, and then you get stuck in just the visual and what you look like, and you can't go deeper because you're just so focused on the visual. Now, you can use all the words you want, but there's a disconnect. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think what has happened is that which is so unfortunate, that the elders in our society are, well, we talked about that. The youth is revered more than the crone stage in life, right? And so we have this younger generation who they do have a lot to offer, but they don't necessarily have the wisdom and the experience to offer in regards to the divine feminine. So we're getting only a parcel of the fullness of the divine feminine. But you don't see very many older women who are elders in our communities who are stepping forward and talking about the divine feminine.
No, I would agree with you. And here's another thing. If you look at, and they're giving me illustrations now, if you look at how the goddesses and the divine feminine are illustrated in, like, I don't know, say card decks, I'll just make something up, card decks, illustrations, or whenever there's maybe a blog written about divine feminine, whatever, there's always a beautiful, beautiful woman, slim. You never see a heavy woman. You never see an old woman. I mean, very rarely, right? Like, it's that, again, we've done that same thing to what we represent in our art, in our illustrations, right?
Yeah. We've discounted the
journey.
We've discounted a huge part of the population who has the wisdom and the experience in regards to the divine feminine. And so the divine feminine, where we are self-empowered.
Yes. So let's talk about what is divine feminine. What are we getting?
Absolutely.
Divine feminine? Because I think that can be very confusing, as well as, like, okay, so what is it we're even talking about? How does that get represented in me, as well as maybe divine masculine, but divine feminine in men and women? So maybe we can talk a little bit about that.
So the divine feminine, from what I gather, what I've been getting, it does not include sacred sexuality. I'm not getting that at all.
So what does that mean? What is, when we talk about the sacred sexuality with respect to the divine feminine, sometimes I'm like, I don't even know what that means. You know what I mean? Really? I don't know what that means. How does that show up day to day? And what is sacred sexuality? I think it feels like it's been misunderstood.
It does feel like it's been misunderstood.
And it seems to be, let me just say this, and then I want to go into what I just mentioned, is the way the female is portrayed with what we were just talking about, in all the beauty and glory and perfection, right? Whether it's illustration or how we try to present ourselves, then leads to a sexual component, because it's about, that's how we look at those things, right? A sexual component, which then leads to, they just said, a mistaken notion of what sacred sexuality is. Do you see what I'm saying? So what is that sacred sexuality? What is that mistaken notion? What are we doing with that? What are we doing that is not intended? Do we know? Can we get anything on that? like, what is sacred sexuality? What is the true nature?
So what's coming through for me in regards to what actually is sacred sexuality is that it is a coming together of two people energetically vulnerable, like they are able to access their highest self and bringing it into this union that I'm hearing alchemy.
Oh, sexual alchemy, they just said.
Yes, yes.
But that's not the end goal. It's a vehicle.
It's a vehicle to alchemy, which leads to creation.
Yes. So we're getting to something here, because what
Mhm.
so many people do is the sex act is the goal. Like, let's see
The
if we can.
orgasm is the goal.
That's what I mean.
Yes.
Exactly. Or thank you. Yes, exactly. And then you're done, and then you feel empty, and you're like, what? Because it's lost its meaning in many cases, right?
Mhm,
With respect to this.
mhm, mhm. It's sacred sexuality is exactly what it sounds like. It's sacred. You have to do your inner work, right? You have to get to a place where
Both pairs,
you
both, or both people.
both of the pair, both partners of the pair have to do their own inner journey work.
And they're
So
saying it's very revered, actually.
yes, this is not something that you, I mean, okay. This is not something that you can go to a workshop and learn how to do,
No.
because each person has to do their own healing inner work, which means forgiving themselves, releasing fear, shame, and guilt, accessing their higher selves in this physical incarnation, this physical vessel. It takes a lot to do that. This isn't, this is really important how sacred this kind of thing is.
And what I'm getting to is that, I think what I said earlier was, that's why just the sex act in itself, with just having the sex act and having it end there, that's what's happening so often to people, because there's nothing more after that, and it leaves people feeling empty lots of times, right? And
Yeah.
because the sacred sexuality part was, okay, they just said two like beings, two like souls. In other words, it's not about control one over the other. It's about they're very much showing up me a pairing up of like energies. Does that make sense?
So one of the things that is coming through is that when you practiced sacred sexuality in the past, both the man and the woman prepared for quite a while before they actually entered into the ritual space, right? And it was not, so it created this alchemy of accessing higher vibrational energies.
Yeah, and you know what I'm hearing? What's happened in modern day is we've suppressed divine feminine and masculine with this the sex act of the way we handle it now, for most in the most cases in modern society, suppressed divine feminine and masculine. It has suppressed that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And
so we left off where I was seeing the picture of the suppression of the true divinity that we can have within ourselves, expressed through the sexual act with someone, but it's been suppressed over time because of the hijacking. So we only stay here. We're down here with with what sexuality can be for us. And aren't able to claim that fullness of our divine feminine and masculine through the sexual act, is what they're saying, because we're in the lower energies with respect to it. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the divine feminine has all the folks who are watching already know this, that the divine feminine has been oppressed and suppressed and repressed for thousands of years, and we're coming back online. However, we are still under the influence of this idea that the divine feminine is a sexual thing.
Yes.
When it isn't. It's an
No.
energetic alchemy thing, or an energetic vibrational
Yes.
thing.
Yes. The sexual part of that is, oh, they just said the culmination. Okay, that ties to what we just said. It's as you grow through time. Remember,
Yes.
you said this. It's a learning process. It's you grow into that, being able to then have that experience. Now, what I also want to make a comment on, what I'm not getting is, this has nothing to do with marriage. Like, oh, you got to go get married and then have that. You know what I'm saying? This has, we're not talking about that at all. That's a whole other conversation we could have too. But
Right.
which has, it can be part of suppression of divine feminine and masculine too. But anyway, point is we're living down here with respect to the sexual component of our being.
Right. We're living in this, and we've talked about this before, that we are programmed to be here in this incarnation, swimming in this soup of negative emotions, right? So fear and anger and hatred and guilt and shame and judgment, all of those. I mean, we're kind of pre-programmed. But that's all changing now, right? So things are definitely shifting and changing, and we're raising ourselves, our vibrational selves, to access more of our highest self, our soul self, into this incarnation as we move into 5D. So sex is going to be changing as well. It's understanding that when we have sex with others, it is really this energetic exchange.
A huge one.
A huge one. And
okay, so think about this, an energetic exchange where if we continue, many of us, if we continue on the journey of just sleeping with one person after another, looking for something else, and we haven't done our work, right? That cycle just continues, and all it does then is lower your vibration. Mm-hmm. Because you're searching for something you're not ready for yet, I would say, right? And you're not going to get it in those who you are encountering in that place that you're in, because you're attracting like vibration. Does that make sense?
Right. Well, I think, so this is what's coming to me just now, is that when we reach that stage of being able to do sacred sexuality with a partner who is the same vibrational place that we are, we have done our work, our inner healing work, to a place where we can love ourselves. So we're not looking to somebody else to fulfill our needs and make us feel worthy.
Or that we need to control the other person, or that we need to, we're whole in ourselves. We understand who we are.
There we go.
That's the awakening journey.
Right.
About it, that's the awakening journey. And then as we enter in that place, and it's kind of hard to say, well, how do you know when you're there? Do you know what I mean? Like, how do you know when you're at that place where, I mean, I don't think it's one of those things where you say, okay, now I can go do sacred sexuality. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
I think it's what I'm getting. Okay, they just said natural event in the sense of, okay, it's vibrational and it's a higher self event. That makes sense.
That's it. So we let go of the ego part of sex, right? The ego part about where the other person has to complete us or provide us with something, or give us that perfect orgasm.
Yes.
It's not about that.
Or how am I performing with them and all that awful stuff that happened.
Right.
Oh my gosh. So, there's a lot of energy around this. So what I want to make sure of, I think we touched on this and we started going somewhere else, is that we, in our best way, explain what divine feminine is, and then let's talk about what do we do to reclaim it? How do you reclaim it in this world that we're in? How do you reclaim it? I mean, what are the steps that are there steps? I don't know. I mean, maybe that's a whole other conversation, but so
that might be a whole other conversation.
I know it kind of feels like, so the divine feminine, frankly, it's the reclaiming of ourselves, whether you're male or female, reclaiming the divine masculine, reclaiming the divine feminine. It's knowing who we are. So, okay, so they're showing a picture of an individual centered in themselves. They're not looking outside for validation. They're not looking outside for credibility. They're not looking for their self-worth, for their self-esteem, for their self-confidence. They've grown through their experiences over their lifetime. Typically, from what I'm seeing over the past, this doesn't necessarily happen right away, when we're our most beautiful.
Yeah, right. Yeah. They know who they really are. They can accept their inner divinity.
Yep. And
for both men and women.
Right. And I think outside of the awakening kind of ascension community, I'm not sure the average person would even know what divine feminine or masculine even meant or heard of it at all. So, this feels to me, and I'm kind of getting this, is that, okay, they keep saying the word reclamation, that this is part of the reclamation as we go through awakening. It's reclaiming the sexual part of ourselves too, but in a way that is healthy and whole. That makes sense?
Yes. The reclamation
we have to go
self.
Have sex. It's not a thou shalt, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, well, if I haven't had sex in a couple of years, then I'm just a, old hag, right? I mean, do you know what I'm saying? Because we do that to ourselves too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Over time.
Let go of the self-judgment.
Yes. But they keep showing the older woman to me. They keep showing very much the older woman to me, the wise woman who knows herself, the wise man who knows himself. Okay, then they just said entering into sacred union. And when they say union, what they're expressing to me is you don't necessarily have a ring on your finger. Sacred union. They're talking about the sexual component to that. Are you getting any of that?
Absolutely. Yeah. But here's the piece. So men also are reclaiming their divine feminine.
We both have both.
Yeah, both of us, or each person, whether male or female, has a divine feminine and a divine masculine side to them. And but the men too are beginning to claim their divine feminine self, which means that they are reaching a point where they are allowed to have all the emotions.
Yes.
And be able to express all of their emotions and work towards self-love and self-acceptance to all of these emotions, to their own humanness, because men are also held to this different standard where they aren't supposed to have emotions, where they're not supposed to cry and all of that. So we're all on this journey of reaching a place, reclamation of self, highest self, soul self, unconditional love of self.
Yes. Yeah, and if you think about this with women, I think back when it was really a man's world in the sense of business, and you can still argue that's still a huge issue, but point is it was much more so back in the day. Women thought they had to become the way men were. And not even just that, they dressed that way, right? Remember, I think it was the 80s where kind of suits for women and the whole bit, right? Like kind of like men, but also that stronger, tough, control personality. It doesn't have to be that way. That's following more the patriarchal kind of way of working or being in general. I think we're coming out of that though, in many ways. But the sexual component of this is very interesting because I think it gets downplayed a lot. We don't talk about it much.
Well, I think a lot of people have, and especially the younger folks, it seems like have kind of gone to the other end of the spectrum where they just sleep with whoever they feel like sleeping with.
And
That's become the norm, right? The Tinder, like,
yeah,
sleep with a different person every night. But that's, and there's no judgment here, okay? We're all on our own journey,
right.
and this is part of the learning process towards movement towards, the divine feminine and the divine masculine. However, so many folks are doing this, but it doesn't come from this place of inner groundedness and being centered and knowing who you are. It comes from this place of distraction and almost
Trying
like
to get your self-worth, your self-esteem, all of the goodies to make yourself feel better about things, right?
about yourself and about others. And it comes from this place of longing for connection, but it's an unhealthy place, if that makes sense. It's this,
and what I'm getting is the awakening. We don't talk about this much, but the awakening is very much part of reclaiming this divinity of sexuality as well. We talk all day long, like I don't have one video on any of this, right? Sexuality, any of this. Now, maybe some people do in spades, but it's the awakening journey also has the sexual component to it as well, which is essentially being able to, okay, they're saying use it for the purpose it was intended. Because they're talking about claiming a higher version of yourself through another, but not self-worth, self-esteem. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Experiencing the fullness of who you are through another.
Well, so what just came to me is that when we have done our work and then we go and we have sex with somebody, it becomes so magical and beautiful because we are mirroring to each other our divinity.
Yes, exactly. Which is why, as we continue to awaken, our vibration shifts and changes. We separate from people that we may have hung out with previously, and now we're not. And a lot of people start meeting their match, whatever that even means, right? So the higher you start attracting a higher vibration individual that might be your friend or your partner or whatever. And so you have more opportunity for that as you continue that individual awakening journey.
Right.
With your own individual growth.
Right. And that kind of leads us to talk about what is a divine partnership.
Right, exactly.
So a divine partnership is where both parties have really done their work and they have let go of this need to have power struggles and this need to own each other.
And I just heard it's the greatest expression two people can offer to the other, to one another.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful.
Because they're at their height of their expression, of being able to understand themselves in their fullness.
And you know what that involves? So when you are in a divine partnership, it really involves a huge amount of trust. It involves being able to share who you really are with the other person. It involves
not controlling. That you let go of control of the other.
Yeah.
We so often do that when it comes to partnerships and relationships. We want them to become what we want them to become. But as we grow in our spirituality, those things start shifting and changing.
Well, the more that we have self-love, the more loving we can be towards others, and the more unconditionally loving we can be towards others as well. And so in that space, we don't try and change the other person.
No. Because what they've always said in the sessions that I do, one of the big things is one must love oneself first and foremost before one can love others most fully.
Perfectly.
It's for any kind of relationship. It's for any kind of relationship. And then when you add the sexual component to that, wow, it makes you really think about what a divine partnership is about. I mean, it's about everything. It's the things we all want and we talk about that we want, that we think we have, that we probably haven't had for quite, in a lot of our relationships, because now we're really coming into a new understanding of what that actually means through the awakening journey.
Yeah. It's the divine partnership creates safe space to be vulnerable with each other.
Yeah. Oh, I just also heard one does not outdo the other. They're a complement. They're a complement.
That's it.
And then you know what they're showing me? Oh God, I have chills. When that happens, as I said, in all its blaze and glory, it's like the two combine into this magical, and they're just shooting off like a rocket, like the magic that can be done. The alchemy. It's alchemy. that then allows creation to take place, right?
Yeah.
And I think you and I know a few couples who have magically come together. Oh God, I have chills, through their awakening journey, right? And they've come together, and forget whether they're twin flames or soulmates, it doesn't matter. But they've come together magically, and they're at this place, and all of a sudden it's like, holy moly, they're on fire. Yeah. And it doesn't mean they don't still have human issues, but they're at a level that allows them to work through those things. It allows them to then greatly achieve in their human form together, kind of as that divine partnership.
Well, they along with complementing each other, they help each other.
Yes.
In moving towards and shifting and transitioning and changing into this more divine self.
Right. Exactly.
It's really magical, but you have to do your own work. You have to you have to do your own healing work. That's the way to get to that.
And so we've hit on like the divine feminine, the sexuality component of that, and divine partnerships, which, and again, what I think I want to mention here is we're not sitting here saying everybody needs to be in a partnership at all. That's not necessarily the case for everyone in their incarnation, right? Not everybody is going to be necessarily paired up or wants to be.
Right. Yeah. I think you will know if it's a divine partnership by the unconditional love that you feel for each other.
Yes. And the growth you've done, and that that you've changed and shifted throughout your journey.
And and that you accept them for who they really are, and who they are presenting themselves to be.
Right. And I do think, sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, obviously we don't accept, any kind of abuse of any kind from somebody else. That's not a divine partnership, but accepting that people have different values or ideas or opinions, and we're okay with that because they accept our opinions, values, and ideas too. So,
and it's interesting because I think this divine feminine, divine masculine is really difficult to wrap our heads around what it even is, and how do you be that, and how do you then have a divine partnership, and what is the sexual component to that, because we have sunk so far, or we move so far away from what that is. We can't even wrap our heads around it fully, right? That it's too hard to understand. What does that even mean? Because they just said enculturated. We have been so enculturated with what we think a relationship is,
and what sex is.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, I'm sorry, but here's the thing: the sexuality has been tarnished, or it's just very low vibrational in our world right now. I mean, it's just like when you think about porn, and it's just taken away the beauty of it. It's not what it was meant to be.
Right. And that's part of that reclaiming your divine feminine, your divine masculine, all of that together. But the divine feminine, reclaiming that, they just said to the status that it was and is meant to be. That comes along with this journey.
Mhm. Oh, and this is the other thing I was going to say, and I forgot earlier, is that sexuality has become a distraction away from doing our own inner work.
Well, that's a really good point.
That's what I meant to say earlier about like porn and stuff. Um, that it can be a distraction away from, and an attempt to get us to view sex from a totally different perspective, a very low vibrational perspective.
As a tool.
As a yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
Low
I mean, this
vibration.
is such a large topic,
It is a
Carolyn,
huge
and
topic.
we've just touched on it
I know, I
barely.
kind of feel like we're going, and this, and this, and this. I mean, it kind of feels like it's been a little disjointed, but it's kind of, to me, it's a topic that we don't talk a lot about in the awakening journey. Now, again,
Right.
there may be people that, oh, well, this is like one of the biggest things they discuss, but I just don't think it's a huge component of this as well. And
Right.
I don't know. I guess we just each find our way with it as we move forward. But well, I don't know. Do you want to cover anything else with respect to this? Any last words of wisdom they're sending you? I mean, let's see
I,
if they've got any last words. Okay, they just said build who you are within yourself first, and all will flow in order.
I agree. I agree. We have to do our own work. And in that process, we can reach a level where we can attain and experience the sacred sexuality for what it really was meant to be.
Right, exactly. Okay, so there's your channel today. I hope you enjoyed it. And like I've always said, is taking away a little piece for your life journey, the puzzle of your life journey. And as always, we love to hear your comments, and I try to respond to as many of those as I can. Also, don't forget, down below you're going to see Celeste's information for her services that she offers, as well as mine. And you'll be able to see what we offer in complement to each other. We would absolutely love to work with you, particularly in our soul journey sessions that we offer. It's a 50-minute approximate audio recording. We talk about your soul journey, really kind of from inception to where you are now. And we give you bits and pieces of what it's been like for your journey over the eons. And what comes through is important typically for your current life journey. They are magical sessions. Celeste and I would love to work with you, as well as us working with you individually. So contact me through purplerainhealing.com if you're interested in working with us or myself. And then also connecting below, you'll see Celeste's information where she offers all of her services as well. So thank you so much for joining us today, and I'll see you in the next video.